What starts as a simple drink between two old friends in a backwater spaceport bar is about to spiral into the most dangerous bet in galactic history. A bet that will challenge every species' definition of beauty. A bet that will draw contestants from across known space. A bet that will prove why humans are the most unpredictable, chaotic, and absolutely insane species the galaxy has ever encountered. And it all began with two words: prove it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all started. A dingy bar on the edge of civilized space where the drinks were toxic, the company was dangerous, and the consequences were... Well, nobody saw those coming. The neon signs hit me first. Flickering advertisements for drinks I couldn't pronounce from worlds I'd never visit. The Rusty Comet wasn't the worst bar in the sector, but it was trying its damnedest to earn that title. Smoke hung in the air like a physical presence, carrying voices in a dozen languages. Traders lying about their cargo, smugglers bragging about their escapes, miners trying to forget what they'd seen in the deep dark. I loved it. I scanned the crowd, looking for a face I hadn't seen in 3 standard years. My contact should be here. Should be impossible to miss, actually, given that he stood nearly 8 feet tall and looked like someone had crossbred a wild boar with a hippopotamus, and given the result, anger management issues. There. Corner table. Hunched over a drink that glowed with a color that probably violated several health codes. I grinned and pushed through the crowd. "Glor, you ugly bastard!" I shouted, clapping a meaty hand on his shoulder. "I heard you'd been eaten alive on Aurea. How the hell did you escape?" The massive head turned. Floppy ears twitched. A snout the size of my forearm wrinkled in what I'd learned to recognize as a smile. When Glor spoke, his voice rumbled like an avalanche with a hangover. "Jax." His hand, easily large enough to crush my skull, clasped my forearm in the traditional Pacadarian greeting. "Still wearing that ridiculous pink skin, I see. Sit. Drink. I have a story that will curl what little hair you humans pretend to have." I slid onto the stool across from him. "Does this story explain why half the sector thinks you're dead?" "That," Glor said, his eyes gleaming with something between amusement and trauma, "is because I should be dead. By all logic, mathematics, and the natural order of the universe, I should be dissolved in the digestive tract of a worm the size of a frigate right now." Now he had my attention. The bartender, a being whose species I couldn't identify and frankly didn't want to, slid 2 glasses of something luminescent toward us. Glor pushed one in my direction. "Nunville," he said. "Drink." I stared at the liquid. It was moving. On its own. "What's in this?" "Better you don't know. Drink. And I'll tell you how I survived 6 weeks in the swamps of Aurea with nothing but a plasma cutter and spite. I've made worse decisions. Not many, but some." I lifted the glass. The Nunville tasted like someone had distilled regret, added a splash of burning rubber, and garnished it with disappointment. I managed not to spit it across the table, but it was close. Glor's laugh could have registered on seismic equipment. "Humans. So delicate. This is a war crime in liquid form," I gasped. "This is what kept me alive on Aurea. Now shut up and listen." And Glor began to talk. Aurea, he explained, wasn't just a swamp world. It was what happened when you took every nightmare about murky water and lurking predators, cranked them up to 11, and then added worms. Lots of worms. Enormous, man-eating, intelligent worms that hunted in packs and could swallow a fully grown Pacadarian without bothering to chew. "But you didn't go there for the scenery," I prompted, already knowing the answer. Glor's eyes lit up with the particular madness that afflicts treasure hunters across the galaxy. Orodium, a crashed mining freighter, 300 tons of pure orodium ingots, just sitting at the bottom of the Gulper marshes. I whistled low. Orodium was rare enough to buy a small moon, or a large space station, or retire to a pleasure world and never work again. So naturally, you assembled a team and went after it. Naturally. Glor took another swig of Nunville. His expression darkened. "We were 12 when we landed. 6 Pacadarians, for humans, and 2 Vrelian scouts. We figured with that much firepower and diversity, we could handle anything the swamps threw at us." "How many made it back?" "2. Me and a human named Rodriguez. Everyone else. He made a gesture that encompassed being eaten, dissolved, or otherwise removed from existence. The story that followed was the stuff of nightmares. Glor described trudging through chest-deep muck that burned exposed skin. Clouds of insects the size of my fist that drank blood and injected paralyzing venom. Plants that moved and grabbed and pulled you down into digestive pools disguised as solid ground. And the worms. Jenkins went first, Glor said, his voice distant. We were crossing what we thought was solid ground. He took 3 steps and then the earth just opened. Jaws the width of a cargo container, rings of teeth spinning like industrial drills. He didn't even have time to scream. Just gone. The ground closed up like nothing had happened. The expedition pushed on. They had to. The erodium was worth the risk. Or so they thought. We lost another 2 to the hatchlings, Glor continued. Thought they were just logs floating in the water. By the time we realized they were juvenile worms, each one still the size of a ground vehicle, it was too late. They moved like lightning, coordinated their attacks. We killed 3, but they dragged down Pactor and one of your humans, that nervous fellow who kept checking his rifle. Thompson, I said quietly. I'd met him once. Good man. Terrible poker player. Thompson, Glor confirmed. After that, we moved faster. Stopped caring about stealth. Just wanted to get to the freighter, grab the erodium, and get the hell out. And did you find it? Glor's expression became difficult to read. Oh, we found it. Half buried in the muck. Hull corroded but mostly intact. We spent 6 hours cutting through the cargo bay doors. 6 hours of watching the water, jumping at every ripple, firing at shadows. But finally we were in. He paused, taking another drink. I waited. The bar noise faded into background static. The erodium was there. All of it. Crate after crate of ingots. Each one worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. We were stacking it onto the hoversleds, planning our approach to the landing site, calculating how rich we were about to become. And then the mother arrived. The way Glor said mother made my blood run cold. Not a worm. The worm. The one all the others were children of. 300 meters long if she was a centimeter. She came up from the deep marsh like a moon rising, water cascading off her segments. Her mouth could have swallowed our entire ship. Her body blocked out the sky. Stars above. I breathed. We ran. Just dropped everything and ran. I saw her jaws close around the freighter, around our score, our ticket to easy living, and crush it like paper. The erodium, 300 tons of it, just gone down her gullet along with the ship. How did you escape? Jetpack. Rodriguez and I activated ours simultaneously, rocketed straight up while she was busy eating our dreams. We didn't look back, didn't slow down, didn't stop until we were at the ship, engines hot, breaking Atmo at speeds that should have torn us apart. Glor finished his drink in one long pull. Lost everything. The crew, the score, 6 weeks of my life in that green hell. But I'm alive. Rodriguez is alive. And I've got one hell of a story. I shook my head in amazement. You've got me beat. My recent jobs have been positively boring by comparison. Oh, Glor's ears perked up. Do tell. We traded stories for the next hour. The Nunville kept flowing. I'd either built up a tolerance or my taste buds had surrendered. Glor told me about the time he'd accidentally started a religious movement on a primitive world by sneezing during their harvest ceremony. I countered with the smuggling run where I'd hidden contraband in fake passenger luggage only to discover one of the fake passengers was actually the sector marshal's daughter. The conversation eventually turned nostalgic. We reminisced about Dracus 9, the lawless moon where we'd first met. Remember how that job started? I asked. Your Merc company and mine, hired by opposite sides of a hostage situation. Glor chuckled. You were supposed to extract the diplomat. I was supposed to ensure he stayed extracted permanently. And then the cyborg dragons showed up. And suddenly we had bigger problems than our contract dispute. That night had forged an unlikely friendship. When you're back to back with someone, holding off a clan of mechanically enhanced apex predators while arguing about who gets to complete their contract first. You either become friends or kill each other. We'd chosen friends. Despite being from wildly different species, Glor from the heavy-gravity swamp world of Packard Prime, me from Earth, we'd discovered we had a lot in common. We both valued the same things. Keeping our heads down, our credit accounts full, and our weapons close. We both appreciated a good fight and a better drink. And we both, despite our different biologies, had strong opinions about beauty. That's where the trouble started. You know what I miss about Packard Prime? Glor said, his voice taking on a wistful quality that the Nunville probably contributed to. The females. Proper Packardarian females. Not like these skinny, fragile things you see on other worlds. I raised an eyebrow. Fragile? Have you met human women? They're tougher than most species give them credit for. Tough, perhaps, but beautiful. Glor activated his wrist computer, pulling up a hologram. This is a Packardarian female. Look at that robust build. Those powerful haunches. That magnificent ear spread. I stared at the hologram. The being displayed was, well, she looked like a slightly smaller version of Glor, which was to say she resembled a cross between a hippopotamus and a tank. That's your standard of beauty? I tried to keep my tone neutral and failed spectacularly. Absolutely. Look at those fat stores, perfect for surviving lean seasons. Those muscle groups, ideal for defending offspring. That hide thickness, protection against predators. She's perfect. She's wider than she's tall. Exactly. Stability. Low center of gravity. Ideal maternal characteristics. Glor was getting animated now, his ears flapping with enthusiasm. Your human females, by contrast, are these tiny, fragile things. No protection. No substantial fat reserves. How do they survive? By using their brains instead of sitting on their problems. I shot back. And excuse me, but human females are the galaxy's gold standard for beauty. We've got symmetry, proportion, curves in all the right places. I pulled up my own holos, images of human women in various poses, highlighting what I considered the ideal form. Glor snorted, which coming from him sounded like a small explosion. They all look the same. Tiny waist, long legs, smooth skin. Where's the variety? Where's the character? Where's the character? They're individuals. Each one unique. Your females all look like the same model with different paint jobs. Take that back. Make me. We were on our feet now, well, I was on my feet. Glor was more accurately on his hooves, facing off across the table. The bar had gone quiet. Other patrons were watching with the anticipation of beings who smelled a good fight brewing. But instead of throwing punches, Glor sat back down heavily. A slow smile spread across his porcine features. I have an idea, he said. I didn't like that smile. I'd seen it before, usually right before something expensive and or dangerous happened. What kind of idea? A contest. Right here, right now. We settle this debate properly. We'll bring in judges, representatives from different species, unbiased perspectives. And we'll bring in contestants, the most beautiful females from across the galaxy. Let the judges decide once and for all whose species has perfected beauty. I stared at him. The Nunville had definitely affected his judgment. But then again, it had affected mine too, because I heard myself saying, "You're on." 20 credits says human females sweep the competition. Make it 50. Done. We shook on it, his massive hand engulfing mine. And just like that, we'd set in motion something that would spiral completely out of control. But we didn't know that yet. Word spreads fast in a spaceport bar. Especially word about something as simultaneously stupid and entertaining as an impromptu beauty contest. Within 20 minutes, we had volunteers. Within 40, we had contestants. Within an hour, the Rusty Comet had transformed from a dingy bar into what could loosely be called a venue, if you squinted and had consumed enough Nunville. The bartender, sensing profit, had cleared space in the center of the room, setting up what amounted to a stage area lit by mismatched glow panels. Tables were pushed back to create seating for judges and audience members. Someone had even found decorative streamers from a cargo hold. though they were meant for a Vrelian funeral and kept displaying condolence messages in flickering script. The judges assembled quickly. We'd managed to recruit 7 beings representing different species and aesthetic preferences. A crystalline Shardian whose people valued geometric perfection, a gaseous nebulite who perceived beauty through energy signatures, a mantis-like Threx who appreciated predatory grace, a botanical Sylvari who saw beauty in growth patterns, and 3 others whose names I immediately forgot, but whose eagerness to judge was undeniable. Contestants began arriving, some already in the bar, others summoned by excited messages sent across the station's communication network. Females of every species, size, and configuration imaginable. Glor and I took seats in the front row, each of us determined to see our respective species triumph. "Ready to lose your credits?" I asked. "Ready to teach you a lesson in true aesthetics," Glor rumbled. The first contestant took the stage. A Tentari female, her dozen appendages moving in synchronized, mesmerizing patterns. Her skin was iridescent, shifting through colors I didn't have names for. She moved like water given form, each motion flowing into the next with impossible grace. The judges nodded appreciatively. The crystalline Shardian actually chimed, apparently a sign of approval among his kind. "Impressive," I admitted grudgingly. "But she's not human." "Obviously not," Glor agreed. "Humans don't have tentacles. Some do. It's a... Never mind." The Tentari female finished her display and received polite applause. The judges made notes on their datapads. Next came a Sorin, feathers cresting in rainbow patterns, flaring dramatically as she moved across the stage. Her species was known for elaborate courtship displays, and she didn't disappoint. Colors rippled across her plumage in waves, creating hypnotic patterns. "Now that's showmanship," Glor said appreciatively. "Peacocking," I countered. "Literally. It's all flash, no substance. You humans and your obsession with substance. Beauty is substance." The Sorin received enthusiastic applause, particularly from the avian species in the audience. Then came a crystalline female, a Shardian like one of our judges. She didn't move so much as rotate, light refracting through her faceted form in dazzling arrays. Mathematical perfection made manifest, each angle precisely calculated to catch and redirect light in optimal patterns. Even I had to admit she was stunning in an alien geometric way. "See," Glor said, "beauty takes infinite forms. I'm not arguing against diversity. I'm arguing for human superiority." "Those are the same argument." "They're really not." The contest continued. More species, more variations on beauty. A Vrelian female with prehensile hair that moved independently, creating flowing patterns. A methane breather in an elegant containment suit, her form visible through translucent panels, moving with alien grace. A cyborg whose mechanical enhancements had been crafted with artistic precision, turning her into living art. Each contestant received appreciation from different judges, their various species-specific preferences coming into play. The Threx judge loved predatory grace. The Sylvari appreciated organic, flowing movement. The Nebulite responded to energy signatures invisible to most of us. Then the Pachyderrian contingent took the stage. Glor straightened in his seat, his ears standing at attention. "Now watch and learn, human." 3 Pachyderrian females paraded across the stage, and I had to admit, by their species standards, they were probably attractive. They moved with ponderous dignity, their bulk somehow graceful in its way. They demonstrated traditional Pachyderrian courtship displays, ear flapping, snout wiggling, and something Glor called the honored stomp that made the entire floor shake. The judges seemed genuinely impressed, particularly those from heavy gravity worlds who appreciated the raw power on display. "Well," Glor demanded, "what do you think?" "I think they're very nice. For Pachyderrians. That's not an admission of defeat. Because I haven't lost yet." As if on cue, the human contingent began their approach to the stage. I won't lie, I'd been nervous about how human females would be received. We were, after all, a relatively new species on the galactic stage. Many of the older races still saw us as upstart primitives who'd barely mastered faster-than-light travel. But I needn't have worried. The first human female to take the stage moved with confident grace, wearing what on Earth would be called evening wear but in space was known as station formal. She was tall, athletic, with dark skin that seemed to glow under the stage lights and hair styled in intricate patterns that drew the eye. The bar went quiet. She didn't perform elaborate displays like the other species. She simply walked, letting her natural grace speak for itself. Human beauty in its essential form, symmetry, proportion, the effortless movement of a persistence hunter's descendant. The judges leaned forward. The audience watched intently. When she finished her walk and struck a pose, the applause was immediate and thunderous. "See," I elbowed Glor. "That's what I'm talking about. Pure, classical beauty." "She's acceptable," Glor admitted grudgingly. "For a human." Two more human females followed, one with pale skin and hair like spun gold, the other with Asian features and movements that suggested martial training. Each brought their own interpretation of human beauty, and each received enthusiastic responses. I was feeling pretty confident. The contest was basically over. Human females had clearly dominated. And then she walked in. The fourth human contestant entered the stage area, and I immediately realized something was wrong. She moved like a human. She had the basic shape of a human. But her skin was blue. Not painted blue, but naturally, genuinely blue. And instead of hair, she had tendrils that moved independently, flowing behind her like they were underwater. "What the hell?" I breathed. "I thought you said only humans were entering for your side?" Glor asked, confused. I don't know what she is." The blue-skinned female began to dance, and it was like nothing I'd ever seen. Her movements were human in foundation but enhanced somehow, more fluid, more graceful. The tendrils added another dimension to her performance, creating patterns in the air. She moved like water and silk had a child, and that child had learned ballet from gravity itself. The audience was hypnotized. Even the judges who'd seemed immune to previous displays were leaning forward, their various sensory organs fixed on her. She finished with a pose that seemed impossible. Balanced on one leg, her other leg extended straight up, tendrils forming a fan behind her. Gravity should have made it impossible. Physics should have protested. But she held it, serene and perfect. The applause was deafening. "What in the 17 hells was that?" Glor demanded. "I have no idea," I admitted. "But I think she might be Andorian." "Andorians are from your Earth solar system though, right? A colony or moon or something." "No, that's... Wait, you're thinking of the wrong... Never mind. The point is, I don't think she counts as human. Your people submitted her. She's your entry. But she's not. The rules didn't specify genetic purity. You said human contingent. She came with the humans. She counts." I wanted to argue, but technically Glor was right. And also, I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to disqualify her. Because if she did count as part of the human entry, we just won by a landslide. The judges deliberated. It didn't take long. The crystalline Shardian judge stood, or rather, rotated to face the audience to deliver the verdict. After careful consideration across multiple aesthetic frameworks, he began, his voice chiming like struck bells. "The judging panel has reached a conclusion." Glor and I both leaned forward. "We find that we cannot reach a conclusion." "What?" I blurted. "Every species present demonstrated beauty unique to their biology, culture, and evolutionary pressures. The Tentauri showed fluid grace. The Soren displayed chromatic artistry. The Shardian represented mathematical perfection. The Pachyderans embodied power and stability. The humans," he paused, "and if a crystal could smirk, this one did, including their unusual blue variant, demonstrated symmetrical appeal and kinetic elegance." "But who won?" Glor demanded. "Beauty," the judge said simply, "cannot be judged by a single standard. What appeals to one species may be invisible or even repulsive to another. What we value in physical form is shaped by our environments, our evolution, our cultures. There is no universal standard of beauty because beauty itself is not universal. It is infinitely diverse." "That's a cop-out," I protested. That's wisdom, another judge, the Silvari, added. We see beauty in growth patterns. You see it in symmetry. The Pachyderrian sees it in robust form. None of us are wrong. We're simply different. The audience began applauding this diplomatic non-answer. Glor and I looked at each other. So, tie? He asked. I guess. Our bet. Null and void. We shook on it, both of us grinning despite our disappointment. The Nunville had worn off enough for me to realize that we'd just organized the most elaborate bar argument in history, and somehow it had ended with everyone winning, or everyone losing. The line was blurry. The contest dissolved into general celebration. Contestants mingled with judges and audience members. Species that had never interacted before were now comparing notes on their respective definitions of beauty. Someone started playing music, a mix of styles from across the galaxy that shouldn't have worked together but somehow did. Glor and I remained at our table, watching the chaos we'd created. You know, I said, I came here for a simple drink and some stories, and instead you organized an impromptu beauty pageant featuring representatives from 24 species. When you say it like that, it sounds ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Glor poured 2 more glasses of Nunville. But that's what makes it perfect. Here's to the absurdity of the universe. And to friendship across the stars. We clinked glasses. The Nunville still tasted like regret and burning rubber. But somehow, it had grown on me. Around us, the party continued. The blue-skinned Andorian was teaching several other contestants a dance from her world. A Pachyderrian female was arm-wrestling a human, both laughing despite the language barrier. The crystalline Shardian was refracting light into artistic patterns that everyone could appreciate. You know what we proved tonight? Glor asked, his voice philosophical in the way only the very drunk can achieve. That we're idiots? That too. But also, we proved that beauty is whatever we make of it. That there's room in this galaxy for everyone's preferences. That we can disagree and still appreciate each other's perspectives. That's surprisingly deep for you. The Nunville makes me contemplative. It makes you drunk. Same thing. I laughed and looked around the bar. This weird, wonderful, chaotic gathering of species who'd come together over something as simple as a drunken argument about aesthetics. There was something beautiful about that. Not in the physical sense, but in the way it represented what made the galaxy work despite all its differences. We were all strange to each other. All alien. All operating from different assumptions about what was normal, what was desirable, what was beautiful. And somehow we made it work. You know? I said. I'm glad you didn't get eaten by worms on Aurea. I'm glad you're still running around in that ridiculous pink skin. Glor replied. It's not pink, it's pink. Peach at most. Pink. We argued about skin tones for another hour, then moved on to debating the best weapons for different scenarios, the worst planets we'd ever visited, and whether the bartender was diluting the Nunville or if we just built up tolerance. The party wound down eventually. Contestants and judges drifted away, returning to their ships or quarters, probably wondering what they just participated in. The bar slowly returned to its normal dingy state, the decorative funeral streamers looking forlorn in the dimming light. Glor and I stumbled out into the station corridor as artificial dawn began lighting the viewports. Same time next year? Glor asked. Absolutely not. This was a one-time moment of insanity. So yes, I grinned. Yeah, probably. We clasped forearms one final time, and he headed toward his docking bay while I made my way to mine. I had a cargo run to make, nothing exciting, just standard freight hauling. Normal work after a very abnormal night. But as I walked through the quiet station corridors, I couldn't help smiling. The galaxy was vast and strange and filled with beings who saw the universe through completely different lenses. We argued and competed and disagreed about everything from politics to aesthetics. But we also came together. We shared drinks and stories. We organized ridiculous contests and learned from each other, and sometimes, just sometimes, we managed to bridge the gap between species enough to see beauty in forms we'd never considered before. That was worth more than any amount of erodium. And it definitely made for a better story than my usual cargo runs. I boarded my ship, fired up the engines, and set course for my next destination. Behind me, the rusty comet grew smaller in my view screen, that dingy little bar that had hosted something unexpected and wonderful. The universe was full of surprises, and I, for one, couldn't wait to see what came next. 3 weeks later, I received a message from Glor. It was brief. The Pachyderrian Beauty Council has officially protested our contest. Something about cultural appropriation and lack of proper permits. We may have accidentally started a diplomatic incident. Want to grab drinks and figure out how to fix this? I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I laughed until my sides hurt and sent back a single word, because that's what friends do. They get into trouble together. They organize impromptu beauty contests that accidentally offend government councils. They drink toxic beverages and argue about aesthetics and save each other from cyborg dragons and man-eating worms. The galaxy was our playground, and the game was just beginning.